moving on to chapter 1. And chapter 1 was cool because right off the back, he answers one of the main questions I had about this stuff. So he's basically going over his first ever successful OBE experience, and he was trying for months by this point. He was following Robert Monroe's first book's instructions on how to do it. And I kind of knew of some of this stuff, but I never knew like to what detail it is because, of course, I've never read that book. But he's talking about how it took him like 5 to 6 hours of effort this one night when he was really like stuck on like, God damn it, I'm going to do this shit no matter what tonight. So he, took him like 5 or 6 hours of lying in bed, which makes sense to me just coming from the lucid dreaming side of things, right? With like wake initiated lucid dreams and stuff like that. But then he starts going into like some of the specifics of how we had to do it. And, we had like the vibrations. Of course, I've heard of the vibrations and stuff before, but I never knew of how potentially violent they could be. I mean, he says like they were at some point felt like he was almost going to get like shocked by, like electrocution kind shock. So he was getting a little bit scared in the process of doing it. He ends up being successful. He was in some really like detailed instructions too. Like apparently he had to get the vibrations to form a circle around his body, then move the circle of energy up along the axis of his body. And he has this like exit point he gets to eventually. He hears all these deafening noises. But long story short, he ends up being successful with it, right? And I guess I probably should have went over this probably in the beginning. I made a video on this at some point in the past, but that shit's probably buried. So for me, when I've had my OBE-like experience, and specifically for me, when I think OBE, I think specifically rise up out of my body in my bedroom, essentially, right? My wife's right there. Everything is how it should be. That's kind of what I will consider it, as opposed to what his definition was, which, I do like also, but just never is how I initially thought about it, to where he just considers an OBE basically anytime you seem to be someplace where your physical body isn't. So for me, when that happens, it normally happens when I'm having a really hard time falling asleep, right? And what I start to realize is I'm actually dreaming of being in the exact situation I'm in, right? So I'm dreaming of being in bed trying to fall asleep, but then I actually do fall asleep. I just don't really catch the transition, right? But at some point when I wake up and I realize, shit, I really was sleeping. I wish I didn't wake myself up. What I try to do then is I just try to guess when I am asleep, and then I'll just sit up. And then, I'll sit up when I really am sleeping, see my whole dream body there, do all that cool shit. But all that stuff beside the point, what I really wanted to say is I've never had to mess with these crazy violent vibrations. I have heard like noises and stuff like that, but normally that's when I'm getting really tired, and it won't be like a deafening noise like he kind of brings up in here. I'll hear like, I hear my dad calling me or something. I'll be like, shit, my dad ain't here. You know what I mean? I know I'm in my bed at my house. My dad's not here. So it'll be like stuff like that for me when I start to hear like those hallucinatory, auditory type things. Okay, but then he has this to say at the end of all this, and this is what really hit it home for me. As time went by, separating from my body became easier. Eventually, I no longer needed an exit procedure. I would fly up and away as soon as the vibrations allowed. Other times, I simply lifted myself out of bed as if I was getting up in the morning. Exactly what I was doing.